Welcome everyone to GAP's first annual meeting. It's very hard for me to believe that in 2017, I was playing bridge and I'm with a very good friend who invited me to a meeting. That friend was Betty Flaherty, and many of you know her. And that invitation has ended up with me sitting here tonight on Zoom, which I prefer not to be, but would much rather see you in person, chairing a committee that is not only a nonprofit, but is moving forward to become a registered charity. And we're well along on that process. The meeting Betty invited me to was the community outreach program of Trinity United Church. And what a group that was. Betty Flaherty and Linda Burton were very concerned about supporting the vulnerable people in Gravenhurst. Alan Link, the minister, was equally concerned and reiterated the need, as well as providing many examples of what community outreach would look like. They were off and running under the very inspiring and committed leadership of Alan Link, a generous donation from the District of Muskoka provided by Heather Elliott, and a quickly coming together with another district member, Jennifer Kingshot and Alan. They hired a needs assessment and a person to do a needs assessment. That person was Marlene Bawalda, and we are extremely pleased that Marlene is still with us today. That needs assessment started January the 30th, and by April 18th, we were able to share the results. The community was invited, churches were invited, service clubs were invited. Anyone we could think of in the community was invited to look at the results. Priorities were established, and after a facilitated brainstorming session, GAP emerged with a vision and a mission to identify needs and resources to support the reduction of poverty in Gravenhurst. We needed an administrator and a program manager. We were very fortunate that Maureen Bawalda took on this position on a part-time basis. None of you are allowed to ask Marlene what part-time means. We have done more than we could possibly imagine with her assistance. So Marlene, thank you very much for all you give. Our first priority was food security. And as you can see in our annual report, that has been quite a journey that involves many volunteers and a great deal of business and community support. Each endeavor produced more awareness of the gaps in our social support network. And one of the things that was highlighted was when we provided healthy snacks at Employment North and the library, it led us to transportation needs and how limited the access is for members of our community. A part-time job at a minimum wage is not sustainable if your salary is eaten up by transportation costs. We began a pilot study with a community donation and a partnership with a local cab company to help people with a ride and emergency transportation when all else failed. The third priority was mental health, the mental health needs of the Gravenhurst community. Our mental health team formed partnerships with CMHA, the Youth Council, Rotary, community agencies, medical practitioners, and schools to develop a comprehensive plan for a wellness hub. The process to develop that vision and framework will be beginning next week, and GAP would like to ensure that the people at the table for that discussion define what needs to be established here. We have also developed a speaker series entitled Building Compassion in order to provide a better understanding of what poverty looks like. The first in the Building Compassion series was held last week, and for those that missed it, it has been recorded and will be available on our website. A not to be missed experience for understanding. As you know, GAP is not a hierarchical organization. But rather a team of volunteers. I'm sorry, technology is very difficult to operate when you're trying to speak and you see all these people are waiting. I'm trying my best. I'd far rather be in person. However, we're not hierarchical. We're all volunteers that come together to share our expertise and to work towards ensuring a dignified life for all of our neighbors. The saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," has never had more significance. The more than 90 volunteers, the businesses, and the donors have worked as a village to ensure our early accomplishments were a reality. I would like to introduce to you the committee that over the past 2.5 years has helped us get to where we are. Our past chair, who's not with us tonight, but has certainly provided inspirational leadership, is Alan Link. We'll miss him when he leaves our community. The chair has been Joanne Twist, our vice chair, Bonnie Dart, our secretary, Susan Reese, and Steve Dines. The finances have been looked after by Yuris Sewestanenko and Peggy Ann Boudreau. Yuris Sewestanenko has been there from the very first days of our meetings. And when I found, our District of Muskoka representative is Marie Malcolm. The Ministerial Council representative is the pastor of Gateway Worship Center, Phil Tomasetti. The Ontario Provincial Police, represented by Samantha Bigley. Canadian Mental Health Association, Desiree Doolittle. The YWCA, Kelly Jones. The Women's Center, Carol Aberdeen and Margot Dunn. Our community liaison, Darlene Osborne. And we have a municipal councillor, a cheerleader, and a volunteer extraordinaire, Joan Morphy. That is your current steering committee. We, of course, do not operate alone. We are supported by a very large advisory council that is composed of agencies, community members, and service clubs who attend our monthly meetings. I can't begin to name them all tonight because some of the membership changes. It's in a very, very inclusive group. And at many of our meetings, we have up to 30 people. I thank you all. You all are the village. And I have one bit of advice. Be very careful with whom you play bridge. They may lead you to more and more and more volunteer opportunities. Thank you, Betty. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight. Jody North has been a valued member of our Advisory Council and Mental Health Committee. She is a Gravenhurst resident who has an innate compassion and care for both animals and humans. Her life experience led her to establish an animal sanctuary and also to be a program manager for Muskoka Victim Services. These experiences combined led her to a realization that there is a need for a navigator to help one through the very complex path of finding support when you need it. I will turn the screen to Jody, who will describe Mind Aid, the program she has developed to support that navigation. Jody.
Thank you so much, Joanne, and thanks everybody for having me. I love that I'm speaking to GAP, one of the organizations that is so near and dear to my heart, and is proof that a bunch of people who give a crap about their community can really pull things together and make big changes, you know, without the help of government, without the help of large organizations, but just caring together. Oh, we got the screen just shifted here on me.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. There we go. Yeah, I mean, if I didn't see GAP and the stuff that happens in GAP happen firsthand, I wouldn't believe that it was possible to make such a huge impact in such a short period of time. GAP inspires me and was part of the inspiration, as were the stories of sadly lost local young people. Inspired me, and my role at Victim Services has been incredible inspiration for the creation of Mind Aid. So I'd like to start by kind of telling you kind of how it came about logistically, just for interest's sake, in a fairly short period of time too, and under the theme of gaps, very much as a gap filler as well. So I think GAP and Mind Aid go hand in hand in that we're both trying to fill a need for people who are vulnerable and at risk. So lots in common there. So about 5 years ago, my wildlife center on Highway 11, just south of Gravenhurst, was closed. The highway needed the land for expansion. And as you can see, several years later, the highway has not expanded. The irony of that situation is everything happens for a reason. I had spent 25 years helping wild animals recover from trauma and horrible things that happened to them. They were rescued animals, eagles missing wings, epileptic skunks, one-eyed bobcats who survived cancer. They all had stories, and those stories led them to needing an extra hand. And even though those animals would never be whole again and never be able to live in the wild, they served a beautiful role in our community in helping me to teach people more about wildlife so that more of those situations wouldn't happen again. So it may seem strange that a girl that spent her time wrestling wolverines and trimming eagle beaks might end up in social services helping humans. I think it's all connected personally. I mean, we're all creatures, we all suffer, we're all affected by the things that happen around us, and we all don't have a choice but to be born with the biology that we have, and all of those things do affect us in life. So I don't see it as so different. When the Wildlife Center closed, a part of my heart broke. I was traumatized because that's all I ever knew since I was 16 years old, was how to care for wild animals. And in fact, wasn't a huge fan of human beings, ironically. I think I had turned to caring for wildlife pretty clearly to avoid people very much as a young person, because I was treated very badly by some very important humans in my life. So the trust was broken for me, and I found that trust in wild animals and was drawn to helping them instead. Once the center closed, I said, you know what, it's time I gave humans a chance. So I started back to school for psychology, wanted to understand why people do the things they do, to help me understand why people did things to me or things happened in my life the way that they did. And while I was in school for psychology, I thought, you know what, I better get my feet wet and make sure that I can work with people. So I started volunteering with Muskoka Victim Services as a volunteer crisis responder, going out at any time of the day on call to respond to folks who were facing tragedies or losses or really awful events in their lives. And I would show up and be there to give them emotional comfort, some of the things I didn't get when bad things happened to me, and to help them with practical assistance in kind of putting the pieces of their life back together. After doing that as a volunteer, I quickly became a team leader. Then there was a position available, a paid position at Victim Services, and I knew I had found my niche. I knew that humans were also a creature that needed help and deserved some of my attention as well. So I applied for the position and became program coordinator at Victim Services a few years ago. So in my role at Victim Services, which is a short-term support service that provides emotional and practical support to victims of crime and tragic circumstance, I came across a lot of young people in particular that would come through our door after something horrible had happened, and they would be needing something from us, maybe a number for housing because they were homeless, maybe information about addictions outreach so that they could conquer an addiction, maybe just somebody to talk to after losing a parent or, you know, an overdosed friend. And those young people in particular, more than our other victims, needed longer term supports overall because they're young, they don't have a lot of life experience. Many of the young people with complicated needs came from backgrounds or home lives without proper supports. So they didn't have that home support a lot of the time, and they didn't know where to begin. And so with my boss's permission, I broke a lot of rules. I held on to clients much longer than I should have or was mandated to by re-entering them into the system in order to allow me to continue caring for some of them. One in particular who inspired me greatly for 4 years, a young lady that came to us after horrific abuse with her life in pieces, very strong addictions issues, broken family, homeless, abused also after the abuse by men out in the community as well, related to her drug use, just a horrible situation. And although there had been 30 social service workers of one type or another in this young lady's life over that 4-year period, she still needed more assistance. Just to give you an idea, when something is so layered and the needs are so complex, it's not as easy as just saying, you know what, go to the local walk-in clinic and ask for help, or go to your doctor, because there's the social aspects of someone's life. There's the school aspects of her life, her education piece, employment, housing, a wellness to do with the drug addiction, with the mistreatment and the trauma, which she needed therapy for. So for people to look at mental health and say simply, you know, reach out for help, call your doctor and you can get better. You know, get on antidepressants and everything will be fine. I learned very quickly that's unreasonable, that every part of your life is linked to your mental wellness. So if we don't look at mental illness holistically, if we don't look at the whole human being and all of the pieces in their life that surround them and attach that to their mental health, then we're not going to succeed at helping people get over these barriers that they have to get a better life and to feel more complete. Long story short, all of these things happening, and we all know of the tragic loss of the young man in our community right here in Gravenhurst. I live in Gravenhurst. It hit everybody very hard. We needed some kind of a support service that could make sure that those young people were looked at holistically. And there are services, lots of them in Muskoka, that do amazing things for young people, so many of them, but they all have their own niche. They have their own clientele. So they have their own ages that they deliver service to. They have their own entry requirements for service provision. Some have to be a referral through a doctor. Some of them have to be through the school system. Some of them are only for one school system, depending on what is out there. So it's hard to navigate. And I do usually do a PowerPoint, but I thought I love this group for the human part of GAP. So I didn't want to just throw facts and stats and stuff. I really just wanted to have a conversation with you, but I do want to take a second to just go to my PowerPoint because I want to show you one slide in particular. And I apologize for my disorganization, but I'll get to that slide and show you all the logos. And I know some of you have seen my presentation with my PowerPoint before, and that's part of the reason why I didn't want to bore you with that either. So we'll go to it for a second though. See if I can screen share here. I think that Joanne, you'll have to enable my ability to screen share. It says it's disabled from my end. The other option is to pass on the hosting to me, and then I'll be able to share it as well if that's preferred. And you're muted right now, so I can't hear you. Joanne, you're muted right now, so I can't hear what you're saying. Oh, there you are. I think I can hear you now.
Yes, and I don't know how to make you host. I've hit new share and I've hit your picture to say that's what I want to share with, but I'm not getting that.
I think if you go up to the three little dots that are in my box in the top right corner of my box, there might be something there. I'm trying to remember.
There you go. Make host. There it is. Sorry, Jody.
Oh, hey, that's all right.
Else. You're now the host.
Okay. I'll bring up my PowerPoint here. Let's see if this works. Oh, technology, eh? Okay, so I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the first stuff here, but I just wanted to show you one slide in particular here. And it's, see if we can get this going here. Can you see this slide that says in Muskoka right now on your end, everyone? Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, because I thought this was pretty amazing. I went online and I just started grabbing logos of all the organizations, and I say all, but it's not all, of many of the organizations in Muskoka that are doing something related to mental health for youth right now. And it's staggering. It's inspiring. We're a small community. We're not the big city. So we do have a lot less resources than you would have in a city center, but we have a lot going on. The problem is try figuring out which one's which and who does what and where to begin. And if you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning because you are clinically depressed or you have an addiction and life, every minute of life is difficult, or maybe you don't have access to the internet, there's so many reasons why it would be really tough if you're a young person to try to figure this all out. Who's going to do what for me? Who has money? Which service is free? Because I don't have any money. You know, which one do I have to get to in a car because I don't have a car? Which one comes to me or does something virtually? It's exhausting just thinking about it. And on top of all the organizations that we have, there are individual practitioners that are part of mental health. Your doctor, often the gateway to get you to psychiatric assessments or into service. So they have to be on board. And we all know many Muskoka residents don't even have a family doctor. So where does that leave them? And what if they're doctors on the family health teams? What if they're not? Is there a difference? Do they get more services with the ones that are and the ones that aren't? Psychiatrists, there's a word that we're familiar with, but what do they really do? What's the difference between them and a psychologist and a psychotherapist? Which one's free? Which one costs money? Which one takes a doctor to get to? Which one doesn't? Which one prescribes medication? Which one doesn't? Which one will do a psychiatric evaluation? Which one won't? It's wild. Social workers, grief counselors, trauma specialists, nurse practitioners, addictions counselors, child and youth workers, caseworkers. And these aren't all the titles. There's guidance counselors, there's nurse practitioners, there's so many different, well, that one's already there. There's so many different folks that can help you, but where to start? That's the staggering piece. So I just wanted to show that because I found that to be overwhelming just to think about. So we'll kind of flash forward. So where are things at now? So what happened was when I got excited about the idea of starting MindAid, I started the process of starting a nonprofit. If you've ever done that before, that's lots of fun. And then I submitted my application only to be slammed with COVID, which stopped the application process from approving my charitable number. So then I couldn't apply for any funding. So I went to Victim Services. My boss, Eva Zachary, who is just the most incredible woman, an excellent boss and a great friend. I explained to her what I was trying to do, and she said, well, we don't want to stop this from happening. We need this. And I know that because you're doing it already through our service and you shouldn't be. So let's get this happening. And so under the umbrella of Muskoka Victim Services, we were able to launch MindAid and use their charitable number to apply for grants. So thanks to our Muskoka Community Foundation and the United Way, Simcoe Muskoka United Way, we were able to get government community money involving helping folks who are dealing with some of the extra stressors caused by COVID. And of course, we know young people are socially isolated. Many of them are not working, being crammed in houses where maybe the social situation is not so great. Addictions have increased, overdoses have increased, domestic violence has increased. So this was a wonderful reason to get this going even faster. So good news is we launched the program September 1st. And in a minute, I'll take you through a couple slides to tell you exactly what it is we do. Here in Muskoka, we originally wanted to launch it to just cover Gravenhurst because we didn't think we'd get enough funding to make it a bigger project. But thanks to the grants that we got, we were able to cover the whole district. So any young person in the district of Muskoka, and I'll tell you which ages they are, is able to come to us when they just don't know what to do. So I'm going to actually go back to screen sharing for a second, and I'm going to take you to our website, if I can even do that. See if I can figure that one out. I don't think it's allowing me to bring that up. Maybe it won't. That's okay. We'll go back to the slideshow for just a second. And I'm just going to, excuse me for like cramming through these slides here for a minute. I'm going to see if we can get to the one that talks about, let's see if it'll let me go backwards here. So what is MindAid? We are a needs-based, client-centered, cost-free local service. And it's really all around navigation assistance. So we're not clinicians, we're not mental health care providers. We don't assess people, we don't give therapy to people. We basically just help people find what they need. And it sounds so simple, but it really is something that was missing in a lot of ways. So kind of, I think of it as a travel agent for young people going on a journey to mental wellness. You know, what are the options? Where can I travel? How do I get there? What will it cost? All of the things you figure out before you go on a trip, but for your mental health. And it's a link to needed funding. And we don't ourselves, in a perfect world, we would have an emergency fund at MindAid, and we will eventually, I'm convinced of that, working towards it. But we try to stay very aware of where funding is in the community through portals of other organizations where there are qualifications that are needed. We understand those qualifications, and that way we can help people get the funding they need if it's a fee for service situation that they can't afford. So we help with that as well. Why is it needed? I don't think I need to explain that anymore. Sadly, a lot of young people just aren't getting the care they need. We won't go into statistics. That's what I wanted to avoid. But what I did want to share, if you excuse me for just blasting through some of this, some of you may have participated last January in a mental health forum in Gravenhurst. And it was wonderful. It wasn't nearly enough time for all of the folks that showed up and service providers who came along to really discuss this thoroughly. But what it did do is it opened up our eyes to how many services we have and how we're not coordinated. It also gave us an opportunity at the end of our short visit to talk about what the barriers were here in Muskoka. And we kind of put our heads together and came up with this list of what we believed were the main reasons why young people weren't getting the care that they needed. Not knowing where to start, stigma, fear, and anxiety, confusing terminology, a fragmented mental health care system, lack of support, lack of financial resources, geography and transportation, which is of course linked to financial resources, and gaps in care during transitions. So we really wanted to take that information that we learned local and build a program that was locally minded to address those concerns. So the nitty gritty, who are we helping? We're helping residents of Muskoka who are 29 and under, with a special focus on adolescents. So 29 and under, we picked that number, and we're a little older than some of the groups that help young people, but we picked that number because modern day psychiatry identifies that 28 is the new 18. A lot of young people may be worldly thanks to the internet, but they don't have the same social and life experiences they may have been getting earlier. And there's a lot of different pressures out there too. So it's a different world for young people. And we definitely didn't want to be another service that said, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. So we kept it nice and broad. And I'm going to be honest, I've had people in their 30s call, and we're going to slam the door or turn them away either. We make sure they get to the resources they need. We just do a little less intensive support of older folks. Special focus on adolescents, meaning those 10 to 19. And that is a group that we really wanted to spend a lot of time with. So we also help parents and guardians. They can come to us too. If they have a teen at home or a young adult that they want to help, we have to get consent from that young person to talk to their parents about their issues, which I think is really important in respecting young people. If they're really little people, we just talk to mom and dad without any problem at all. So how exactly are we helping young people? We are helping them by listening, and that sounds so rudimentary, but honestly, sometimes it takes a great deal of time to understand someone's full issue or even just a piece of what's going on in their world. And a lot of young people who come from broken lives or broken homes have trust issues, as I did when I was young, and they'll kind of test the first time you meet them. They might only tell you one problem, and it might not even be the big problem that they're having, because they want to see how you're going to handle it and whether they're comfortable with you. So my first meeting with a young person, sometimes I don't learn a whole lot. But once we kind of build a rapport, the next time I see them, if I really just tell them I've got all the time in the world, it's amazing the things that will come out. So listening can't be underestimated. Tailoring. We mean tailoring. A lot of programs tailor to the people they serve, but in our case, we're a mobile service. So we can use offices of some of our partner organizations if somebody's comfortable in an office setting. I can meet somebody in the gazebo in their yard, which I did last week. We can meet somebody going for a walk, as long as we're being safe during COVID, over the phone, over text, over email. Honestly, it's what they are comfortable with. Connecting, we want to do the work to connect all those fragmented services. So we know caseloads are heavy for all these folks doing this great work in the community, and they don't always have time to be putting in that extra, who all is in your life, and let's make sure that we all know what everybody's doing, and MindAid wants to do that work. Demystifying, just explaining the terminology. What is a psychiatric evaluation versus a psychological evaluation? Which is psychoeducational evaluation? These are words that people don't understand, so we help with that. Guiding and supporting, we never make decisions for people or make a plan for them. We just lay out the options like a travel agent. They pick the course, and then we support them on the course they choose. Advocating, that's a big one. There's a lot of young people that don't feel comfortable speaking loudly for themselves, or maybe aren't taken as seriously as they should be. So we're happy to make phone calls, happy to introduce them to organizations, or even go with them if they want us to. And then staying invested. We don't have a limited time with them. We'll spend as much time as it takes. It's a long-term service if it needs to be, and they can come back as much as they want to. There's no expiry date or cost, so that's nice too. Will it help? In a nutshell, this slide says yes. It says that this is a growing area in healthcare, both mental and physical healthcare. Navigation is. And we reached out to these two organizations that you can see the logos of, Family Navigation Project and Pleo, both doing great work, told us where we were before we even started, where we were doing things right and wrong in our plan, and told us they're always open for conversation if we need any more advice or support. So we know it's going to work. So our outcomes, we think, decreased stigma, fear, shame, and anxiety, decreased waiting times. We can't influence other organizations' wait times, obviously, but what we can do is make sure that the folks that are waiting in lines are in the right lines, so we don't have longer lines than there needs to be, and people don't end up spending months waiting for an appointment only to find out they should have been lined up somewhere else. So we can help reduce them in that case, or even provide funding to pull people out of lines to put them into a faster paid service sometimes when appropriate or urgent. Increased access to care, increased rate of properly matched care, mental health care system fluency within the community. The more we teach people how this stuff works, the more they'll spread that information. We all know that if we break our leg, we go to Emerge. The doctor takes a look at it, sends us to the X-ray department to that professional who tells us what's going wrong inside there. That information goes to a surgeon who then puts it back together. We get sent to a pharmacist for drugs to help us with the pain. We go to physiotherapy to help us recover. We don't have the same awareness of what we do when we're having a mental injury. And I think that's what we mean by fluency. Increased connectivity within the mental health care system and increased overall quality of care. And then obviously we want to make young people feel better. That's a big one. So I'm going to come back on the screen here and sort of tell you where we are at. Here we go. So currently we launched September 1st. Woohoo! I couldn't be more excited. And we launched kind of quietly because I was a bit worried because our navigator is just me. And I have a full-time job at Muskoka Victim Services and didn't know how big of a tidal wave I'd get hit by or whether nobody would show up or I wouldn't hear from anyone. Well, it turns out that I'm now kind of doing 2 full-time jobs. So in the first couple weeks, I have been dealing with well over a dozen families and youth, all with such a varied bunch of stuff going on. We've got a 10-year-old that is having night terrors and hasn't been able to sleep because of severe anxiety since COVID started. Dealing with somebody with depression and anxiety that's looking just for CBT counseling in particular and isn't able to afford counseling on their own with a private practitioner. So some fairly simple ones that are easier connections. And then I actually got permission to share a complex story with you that I thought was pretty mind-blowing. I had a mom reach out to me who said that her daughter was getting some mental health help, but that things were not getting better. Things were getting worse. And I need to sort of back up and tell you her story because it's staggering. This young lady from Muskoka at age 17 was brutally raped. And I apologize. I'm not going to tell you details, obviously, of what happened. I don't mean to upset anyone. I will tell you that she was hospitalized for some reconstruction. So this was a severe, brutal attack. This young lady needed medical help and obviously would have been severely mentally affected by the event. After it occurred, immediately in the aftermath, she was connected with services. She declined them. She thought she'd be just fine. She was embarrassed. She didn't want to talk about what happened. She thought maybe it was her fault. She was young. She just thought her friends could help her through it or her family. And you can't force someone to get care even when you know that it's what they need the most. So this young lady then went on for 4 years trying to cope in the aftermath of what happened to her. Very quickly turned to drugs. And we think of often, I have addictions in my family, and I understand very well where drugs, illegal drugs fit into people's lives. It's a coping mechanism. When you can't bear the pain of the anguish that's happening inside your head, it's very easy to tune out with illegal drugs. And they learn that very quickly, and it feels better. It destroys their lives in the long term, but it does alleviate the pain in the short term. So this young lady became very addicted to drugs, which then led to the falling apart of her family relationships. She lost all her money. She became homeless. She became desperate. She still wasn't getting the mental health help she needed. She then turned to her drug dealer for more drugs without money, and her drug dealer then started selling her. Human trafficking. Instead of her paying for drugs, which she didn't have the money for, which is the only thing that would relieve her mental suffering, she would then have to go and do acts with men, strange men, much, much older than her, in order to earn the drugs she needed to get out of the pain from what happened to her before. Now, you can imagine compiling what is now happening in her life is to help her cope which is actually just piling on top of the thing that happened in the first place. Things just got worse for her, much, much worse. She tried to kill herself, ended up in a psychiatric unit for a period of time, was released again on antidepressants and anxiety medication, which didn't make her feel good. There weren't good follow-ups for her meds, so she stopped taking them, spiraled again. It just was this endless cycle. And her mother called to say she has an addictions counselor that she sees on a regular basis, but it's not getting better. I still have men dropping her off in the middle of the night at the house when she doesn't have somewhere to stay. What do we do for her? And so I went to their home and we sat in the gazebo and I got to know her. And actually we went for a walk and she took her shoes off and we were walking in puddles together up and down the road while she chatted and shared with me. And I said to her, I happen to know a program that can get you the proper counseling you need for trauma. And she said, I've been asking for that forever. And she wasn't getting it. And she started to bawl and she said, thank you. I wanted that so badly. And I said, well, that's no problem. I know I can do that for you. I can get you at least 10 sessions with a really qualified individual that deals with exactly what you've been through. And then I said, now what about this drug stuff? You know, are you thinking about rehab? And that's when she shared with me she was on a waiting list for rehab, publicly funded, free rehab, which she had to wait 8 months to a year to get into. Is she going to even make it to 8 months to a year? Anybody's guess. So I said, okay, you know what? You have been human trafficked. And I happen to know of a program that funds rehab for victims of human trafficking. $20,000 that she was able to get towards rehab. And the waiting list, days, only days. And that rehab center has counseling for trauma, the specific type of counseling that she needs, has an aftercare plan, has lifetime support after you graduate from rehab. We looked into into transitional housing that we're going to work on for when she comes home. When she comes home, she'll get a counselor here locally that continues the care that she's been having in rehab. And honest to goodness, her mom cried tears of joy, said Mind Aid was the light in their life. And all it wasn't inventing anything that doesn't already exist. It was just knowing what's out there and listening and finding out where she's at, you know, and walking in puddles so that she'd share, just making it very, very human. There was no eligibility process or intake process, no qualifiers that she needed. She just needed to say, I need help. And then we needed to talk and then start finding those things. So I'm happy to say that that young lady was driven to rehab today. So all we can do is cross our fingers and know that when she gets out, I'll be here. And I'm hoping she writes me while she's in there, and we'll continue when she gets back out again. And that's just one story of over a dozen that's happened in the last couple weeks. So my dream has come true. I'm doing something that I wish could have been done for me when I was young. It's incredible. I'm right where I should be, and it wouldn't be for all of the folks in the community who have supported this and victim services. And I'm the only thing that I'm super worried about is that I'm going to get too many people and not be able to keep up. So my current mission is to raise funds so that I can hire another navigator or two and to keep up with the demand, because I definitely don't want to be another place that closes doors or has waiting lists or, you know, is a barrier to people. So I've got to keep that balance. And my work at Victim Services has been incredibly flexible to allowing me to put time into this while doing my job as well. So I'm so pleased to share this with you folks, because I know you understand what community means. I know you understand what it means to identify gaps and then to take really practical, locally made steps together as a community to fill those gaps. So proud to be part of GAP and proud to share this story with you of what's going on with Mind Aid. And we do have a website and we are on social media, so please follow us and please share what we're doing. And if you know people with big, giant vaults of money, please tell them to call me so we can build this up as fast as we need to as the demand comes in. So that's it. If anybody has any questions or any comments or anything, I'd love to hear them.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a social work student at Lakehead University, and I will be doing my placement with GAP this year. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And I am super excited to hear all of what you just talked about. You're like speaking to my soul right now, with everything. I mean, I'm sitting here, I could feel my insides jumping around for joy right now. And I was actually saying to Marlene when we were talking last week that that's something that I'm also passionate about, is helping other people in the community that need it, connect them to resources that they don't even know exist. So, I mean, in terms of being a navigator, I could see myself being that person for you if and when the time comes. Yeah, so we will be in touch because I'm all about it.
Sounds great.
So yeah, thank you for, getting everything going, because I've been through all the years of my education now. I'm in my 4th year. So I graduated in June, hopefully with my bachelor, and I would like to get my master's in social work. But yeah, like through all the years of my education, I've been thinking like, how do we fill the gaps and how do we connect people and like what needs to happen? So everything that you have just described is like, it's just hit it home for me. I'm like, yes, these are my people. So I'm super excited.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I have a question, Jody.
Yes.
So how did people find out about you already? Like what kind of,
Well,
I can't believe
was,
that you have over a dozen people already. That's
I know.
awesome.
It's funny because I was going to do a press release and then I didn't because I got super busy, and I was really glad I didn't do a press release. There was one story that did come out in the paper, which was amazing because
Right. Yeah.
the reporter that wrote the story had actually seen me do like an information talk. And so she said, "You mind if I do a story?" And I was like, yeah, that would be really, really nice. And after that story, it was like boom, 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 boom. These referrals started coming in. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'm not saying a word because I need to be able to gauge whether I can keep up with this demand. So it is launched, but it's quiet. But it's interesting because some of the referrals have actually come from service providers. So there was a handful of folks, and I think honestly, I'm at 15 or 16 clients at this point, and or their families. And some of them were like, there's a local psychotherapist that sends somebody my way, OPP, Sam Bigley. Send somebody my way. A school teacher has sent someone my way. It's somebody that's a member of GAP sends somebody my way. So they're really coming in from all different angles. And some of them have just called. There's a 1-800 number, and there's a really easy way to email through the website. So I'm just randomly getting messages that are coming in saying, I heard about this. Is it true that you'd help us find what we need? And so it's happening. And so I'm glad it's getting out there, but also kind of like,
That's scary, right?
Yeah. So it's been neat to find out how they're learning about it.
Yeah,
News
that's
spreads
great.
fast and in a tight community. Yeah.
Thanks for
I just
doing
have
That's awesome.
I have a quick question because, I mean, I think we've all heard of the recent death last summer of that young chap from somewhere in Ryde, I believe. How are we getting to the youth? How are we getting into the high schools to make them aware of what you're doing? Because this sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm really proud of what you're doing, Jody, and you should be very proud of it too.
Thank you. And yes, my it's always been my goal to reach the youth. So I am trying to do it a few ways. And I mean, obviously with this current state of affairs of COVID and the teachers, coping with this strange transitional new world of school that's going on, some of the usual processes that are happening in the schools are different right now, and they've got a lot on their plate. And so I will eventually reach out to the boards and find a way to get into the school. I'm not going to do it yet because that would be a massive tidal wave that I wouldn't be able to keep up with. So I really want to make sure we're really stabilized and well equipped once we do that. But also, I don't believe, and I've heard through folks that are working with the schools that I was speaking with some guidance counselors directly that are working in the schools right now, and they said, yeah, we're just trying to get through the day. Like, we're not looking at bringing in new programs right now. And I respect that completely. I am letting the guidance counselors in the schools are learning of the program, which is great. And they know they can refer to me. I'm not going in and speaking directly to the young people yet, but I hope to work with community partners. I know Desiree Doolittle and I have been chatting about some programs between Addictions Outreach program that she's doing, which is already very well established in the schools. And if we can work together to have a youth drop-in all 3 big towns would be great, but we may start in one. We're kind of talking about it right now, where young people can come to us and just hang out. We'll find a place that doesn't mind hoodlums hanging around, and we'll provide them with snacks, some healthy, some not, and we'll lure them, and then we'll start to build relationships and see if we can't help some of these young people directly. On top of that, I've hired a really fantastic social media gal that is local, that is going to be really targeting and carefully watching statistics. I don't get all the mumbo jumbo social media stats and all of that stuff, but she's watching our demographics, and she's going to try to make our social media reach young people as well. Cause we all know, Instagram and that stuff is the way to get to them. Their lives are half online, half in the real world. So we're using that as a way to get a hold of them as well. So, I mean, if I got all the cash in the world, I'd put a giant billboard on Highway 11 and hope they'd see that too. Maybe even a giant hot air balloon. However it takes to reach them. Yes.
I also think, Jody, in working with you, good service, people will talk, right? And that will be the biggest advocate, getting Mind Aid out in community. You work with a couple of youth and you show them who you are and how genuine you are, and you'll have many referrals.
Yeah, I hope so. And I am doing surveys too. I'm a bit slow on getting that out there, but I've talked to some of the families that I've kind of concluded their current needs and said to them at the end, if you're happy or if you're not, I need to know. If there's something you want to be done differently in the future, I need to know, because this is growing. So help me grow it the way that it fits the best in the community. And all of them have been incredible. I've got one woman who's like, if you want me to market you, if you want me to get what you've done for our family. She has a young lady that has an eating disorder, who's lost a tremendous amount of weight, and the family was just at their wits' ends, and gave them a bunch of different options and got them hooked up to several different professionals to help with it, and got them parent toolkit for parents with kids with eating disorders. And she said, oh my God, I didn't know any of this stuff existed. So I'm having lots of, let us help you now. I even had a family invite me to Thanksgiving dinner. So we'll have to be careful to keep those professional barriers somewhat intact. But yes, I'm hoping too that the families that I work with will tell other families what's going on. Yeah. Get them that way too.
I don't have a question, Jody. I'm going to ask you if you would make Bonnie Dart the host.
Yes, absolutely. With pleasure. I couldn't think of a better person. Here we go. So how do I do this? Here's Bonnie. Here's her little 3 dots. Oh, there we go. Make host. There we go.
I don't know what difference that's going to make to me, but anyway, I am going to say a few things. Jody, you've created such a well-designed process for our young people experiencing mental distress. You've received accolades tonight. I've heard a personal testimony myself, and it's exciting to hear how much success you've had with young people so far. We're grateful for you coming to our very first AGM to be our keynote speaker, and it's just been lovely having you. I'd like to present you with this this little gift. I don't know if I can squeeze it through your window.
I'll try to get it here.
Okay. I don't think so, but I will get it to you. So I'd like to ask everyone to please join me in clapping, thumbs up emojis, or whatever you like. But we certainly are so happy to have had you. I've heard you a few times, as you know. I love your whole PowerPoint presentation. I would never get bored of it, so never feel you have to apologize about repeating that. But it was nice that most people here could get part of it anyway. Thank you, Jody. So I'm going to move on to the next little item of business. We just have a couple of minutes left here, folks, so hang in. I'm going to introduce the new steering committee for GAP, which was decided upon in the business meeting prior to 7 o'clock. And before, as I start, I want to start off with the biggest possible thank you to Joanne Twist, who has been our chair for this past while. I don't know exactly how long, Joanne. As long as I've been on board, which is a couple of years, it feels like. Well, I guess Alan was in there before. But anyway, Joanne, your passion, your love for community has driven this train, and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed stepping into the chair position, but I know that I'm going to be able to rely on your guidance and leadership, and I just thank you so much for being there from the beginning and just keeping it going. So at this point, I will introduce the rest of the steering committee. I have to refer to a list here. So I've mentioned Joanne is now our past chair as I step into the role of chair. Our vice chair, David Weatherald, who is also looking after, has just taken over our food coordinating position. So he's going to be in charge of food resources. So thank you for that, David. Our treasurer, Peggy Ann Boudreau, for financial reporting. Secretary is being shared by both Steve Dines and Susan Reese. We have a fundraising director, Gord Durnan, who's now stepping in on our steering committee. Volunteer coordinator, Sandra Holdsworth, who is in the capacity of managing our MailChimp database, along with Joanne, who's going to be taking some role with the volunteer coordinating as well. Gravenhurst Women's Center liaison is Carol Aberdeen. The District of Muskoka Community Service liaison is Marie, Malcolm, I'm sorry, Marie. I should know your last name by now. Youth Council coordinator, our liaison is Sam Bigley. Our agency liaison is Kelly Jones, who is works for the YWCA, is also the coach for Circles and a member of RAMP. Also, our ministerial liaison is Phil Tomasetti. Our mental health team chair is Desiree Doolittle. And our transportation team leads Joe Morphy and Margot Dunn. And last but not least, our program manager, Marlene Buwalda, who has been doing a stellar job from the very beginning on GAP. I want to introduce as well Brian White, who's not a member of the steering committee, but is our social media coordinator as of a week and a half ago, and has accomplished an amazing amount of reach and response from the community with his professional, polished posts on Facebook and Instagram, and he's been helping us with video uploads and all kinds of other techie stuff, which we really appreciate, Brian. So we hope you'll be at the steering committee meetings as a guest whenever you are able. We would love to have you. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is our steering committee. I guess at this time, I would just like to thank all of you, the boosters and believers in GAP. Your presence here shows that you care about the well-being of those people in our community who are living in difficulty. Your presence also shows that you believe in what GAP is doing, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for the many ways you support GAP. And I just realized that I somehow missed somebody's name, and it was Jamie. I apologize for that. My eyes are a bit blurry right now, so I'm going to blame it on that. But Jamie Miller and Darlene Osborne are our community liaisons. Sorry, that just popped into my head because I knew that Jamie was there with Marlene, and I don't know if she still is. But anyway, is she there, Marlene?
Sorry, no, she just left.
Oh, okay. I'm glad she didn't know that I missed her then. Anyway, again, thank you to all for being here. I wish you all a good evening, and we'll see you in person, I hope, soon.